It's going to be another emotional night at Nationwide Arena tonight, but the Blue Jackets need to have a big game as the Calgary Flames come to town. Let's talk about that on today's Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, and to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. The Calgary Flames are in town. This is one that I suspect has been circled on the calendar for quite a while for both teams. It is the first time that both teams will face each other without Johnny Gaudreau in the lineup. It's going to be an emotional one for the players, for the fans, for everyone watching at home. Like it's going to be a big one. And the Blue Jackets just coming off the back of that frustrating 4-3 overtime loss to the Canadians. The Flames are on a 2-game losing streak right now. They just lost to Detroit in overtime a couple of days ago. Both teams kind of need a bounce back, but the Blue Jackets need a bounce back more, I think. They've got a slightly worse record than the Flames. I thought the Flames had a better record than they actually do, based on how people were talking about them. And I think it's because everyone assumed that they were going to be just garbage this season, which relatable, but they're currently somehow second in the Pacific with a 12-7-4 record, which is 12 wins and 11 losses if you're keeping track at home. So like basically just under or just over 500 hockey, and somehow that's good enough for second in the Pacific, because the Pacific is weird and always has been. So like this is not as much of an insurmountable game as I thought it was going to be. Just because, again, when I glanced at the standings, I was like, oh, the Flames are at second in the Pacific. Like, that's, they're ahead of the Kings. They're ahead of the Canucks. Like, they must be doing okay. And then I went in and looked and was like, oh, actually, 12 wins and 11 losses is not, like, the dominance that I was expecting. They have allowed fewer goals than the Blue Jackets, but they've also scored fewer goals than the Blue Jackets, which is not a surprise. The Blue Jackets are allowing more goals than I would like and scoring more goals than I expected. So, like, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the goaltending, because that's going to be a big key for Calgary specifically. And I want to just kind of talk a little bit about the emotions of the game, because there's a couple of articles I read last night / tonight as of recording this. So I want to talk about that as well. So we'll talk about kind of the granular game stuff first, and then I think we'll save kind of the emotional stuff for a little bit later on in the episode. But Blue Jackets need a bounce back. They were not good against Montreal. However, the Blue Jackets typically this season have been good against teams that are in playoff spots, and not so good against teams that aren't in playoff spots, which is a wild return to kind of the Tortorella era of Blue Jackets hockey, which is where they would show up big against good teams and kind of not be as good against less good teams. The Tortorella era Blue Jackets did this thing where they kind of played to the level of their opponent. And it was really frustrating to watch. I'm sure it was frustrating for opposite teams' fans as well. Like, why are the Blue Jackets beating the top team in the league when they can't beat the lottery contenders? So obviously this is not like universally true. They lost to Washington, they lost to Florida, they lost to Minnesota, they lost to Winnipeg. But like over the past little while, the Blue Jackets they had a 3-game winning streak. They've won 4 of their last 6. 3 of those 4 wins have come against playoff teams. In Boston, who admittedly is kind of up and down this season, in Tampa, and in Carolina, who is the best team in the Metropolitan Division. So like, what Blue Jackets are going to show up tonight? There's no way to know. Hopefully the Blue Jackets that play well show up tonight, but there's really no way to know. In terms of just like minor lineup news, it sounds like Cole Sillinger is going to be back in, which is great. I don't know about Igor Chinakhov. He missed this morning's skate with maintenance. He missed. Yeah, he missed this morning's skate, or I guess yesterday's skate. Depending on again, as of the time of recording this, etc. So we might get Sillinger back and then lose Chinakhov. Which do you just slot Sillinger in on that second line and roll a line of Sillinger, Fantilli, Johnson, or do you move him back to center, move Danforth back to wing, and then put someone else up with Fantilli and Johnson? Like I do not know. I guess I mean like morning skate might give us some more hints and whatnot, but who can say? You know, it's gonna be an interesting one. I don't think that they played badly enough in terms of like there was no lines that were abject disasters. You know, like I thought the fourth line was fine. I thought the top line was fine. Like I think that the Fantilli line needs some tweaking. But I've thought that basically all season long. I don't know that this is kind of a game that a performance against the Canadians, that is, that requires like a complete tear down of lines and try again. You know, I would keep the Voronkov, Monahan, Marchenko line together. I would keep Fantilli and Johnson together, and then yeah, like maybe genuinely put Sillinger at the wing there. I know that they like having Sillinger in center because he takes a lot of faceoffs. He's better in center than he is on the wing. But if you want to get Fantilli going, like Sillinger might be the key there. I don't know that we've seen that Sillinger, Fantilli, Johnson line together. Maybe I think we've seen obviously Sillinger and Johnson together, mostly in the preseason. I think we've seen Fantilli and Sillinger together, and obviously we've seen Fantilli and Johnson together. But I don't know that we've seen. I don't know that we've seen Fantilli with Sillinger and Johnson together. I'm just pulling the lines up now to see. We've seen Johnson, Fantilli, Chinakhov. We've seen Voronkov, Sillinger, Chinakhov, Fantilli, Monahan, Marchenko. We've seen Sillinger, Fantilli, Chinakhov. Yeah, no, I don't think we've seen Pucha, Fantilli, Sillinger. Like, I don't think we've seen Johnson, Fantilli, Sillinger as a line, and I think that would be a fun line. Personally speaking, I think that it's got a little bit of everything. You know, I think Sillinger has really grown this season. You know, I'm sure he'd like to be on the score sheet a little bit more often, but I think that the things that we're seeing him do away from the puck is really great and really good and fun. So that's what I would do anyway. Is I would keep everything else mostly the same, and then just flip Sillinger for Chinakhov if Chinakhov in fact does not play. I think he's questionable to play. So if they do that, I think they should be mostly fine. Again, depending on what Blue Jackets show up, you know? Let's take a quick break, and then when we get back, I want to talk about goaltending, because I'm assuming we're going to see Elvis tonight, but I'm also assuming we're going to see Dustin Wolf for Calgary, and that's something I want to talk about in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to talk to you about Game Time, because I don't know about you, but I love live hockey, and I love not paying a lot to go to live hockey as well. Like, admittedly, I mostly go to Sharks games these days where the team is bad and tickets are super cheap. But even without that, I would still go to Game Time because they have better tickets for lower prices. And that's just a win in my book every single time. They've got a new feature right now called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Filters out the fluff to only show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And if you buy tickets to a Sharks game, there are thousands of available tickets because they cannot fill that building right now. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in your section and row for less, which I love. I have used that a couple of times, actually, where I have found cheaper tickets somewhere else, but I'm a brand loyalist, so I stick with Game Time, and I get my 110% credit. And they also have the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, so I love that as well, obviously. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your next purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? game time. I also have to tell you about Built, because I don't know about you, I rent. If you also rent, you should start taking advantage of Built, because here's the thing. We earn points on groceries, travel, practically everything else we buy. There's a million different credit cards out there that will give you miles, that will give you free groceries, that will give you all kinds of things. But we should also be earning points on rent, which is one of our biggest monthly expenses. Built has changed the game by letting renters earn high-value points on rent and around their neighborhood. There's no cost to join, and as a member, you're going to earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world that you can redeem your Built points towards. Points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. That's joinbilt.com/LOCKEDONNHL. Make sure you use our URL so they know that we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points on your rent payments today. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking goaltending right now. Elvis was not great against Montreal, which was frustrating for many reasons. And again, we're seeing some inconsistency in Elvis this season. Not as like the wild swings that we saw last season, and also there was a lot fewer good games from Elvis last season than there were bad games. And at the minute, it seems like we're getting a couple of good games and then a couple of bad games, and then a couple of good games and then a couple of bad games. Elvis had 2 really good games against Pittsburgh and Boston, and then has followed that up with poor games against Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Montreal. Now, admittedly, he got the W in both Carolina and Tampa Bay, but he had an .800 save percentage against Tampa Bay. Like he allowed 6 goals on 30 shots. It just so happened that the Blue Jackets scored 7. So you know, if your team scores 7, it's okay if you allow 6, right? In theory. Again, similarly, Carolina, 4 goals on 36 shots is fine. It's hovering around about league average. I would like it to be a little bit higher. And then I thought he was very poor against Montreal. 826, 4 goals on 23 shots. And for my money, should have had at least 3 of those, in my opinion. So they need a good game from Elvis. I don't think we'll see Tarasov tonight or tomorrow night. Tonight. Yes, tonight. I think the next time we'll see him will probably be the next back-to-back, unless, knock on wood, Elvis gets hurt, which dude gets hurt a lot. He's been mostly okay this season, which is good to see. Again, I'm just going to knock on a different kind of wood, and knock on my own thick skull. But so far so good with Elvis. It looks like the next time we might see Tarasov could be Thursday or Friday. They're on their West Canada swing. So they'll be playing the Oilers on Thursday and the Canucks on Friday. So like a week today. That's the next back-to-back this team has. We might see Tarasov sooner than that. They play Chicago on December 1st. Oh, that's their next game. Actually, I forgot that it was almost December already. How? Anyway, we might see Tarasov then, but I'm not like expecting it. It seems for better or worse that Elvis is the guy they're going with right now. I think Elvis has performed better than Tarasov at this point in the season. However, you don't get to play yourself back into your good graces if you're not playing, and it's even tougher for a goalie, because if you're a skater, you can play limited minutes and you can prove that you are, good enough to get those minutes back. It's less of a risk to play a struggling forward or a struggling defenseman than it is to play a struggling goalie, especially against another, like a team that is above you in the standings and is better, So I don't know when we'll see Tarasov. My guess is potentially next game against Chicago, depending on how Elvis plays tomorrow night or tonight, and depending on what they want to do. They might decide, no, we're going to go with Elvis. Like, Tarasov hasn't given us any chances to win. He was good for a couple of games at the beginning of the season and then just kind of fell apart slowly. And I wonder if he has similar issues as Jonas Korpisalo. And this is something I've talked about, ad nauseum on this podcast, is Jonas Korpisalo is the better he plays is when he plays more, like if he's playing a bunch of games all in a row, he gets into a groove, he gets into a rhythm. He's a very, goalies are creatures of habit, but specifically Jonas Korpisalo, the more he plays, the better he is. So if he doesn't play if he plays once every 2 weeks, then he's going to struggle because he can't get into that habit, he can't get into that rhythm. And I think Tarasov is kind of a similar story. However, it's tough to keep going back to an underperforming goalie just because he plays better the more he plays, So we'll see. Again, assuming we'll see Elvis tonight. On the flip side of that is the Blue Jackets will be facing off against Dustin Wolf, who is having a really, really great rookie season. I think this technically counts as his rookie season. He played a handful of games last season, but again, the rules with goalies are weird. Dustin Wolf is currently 8-3-1, I believe. In 12 games this season, has a .921 save percentage, a shutout, and a goals against average of 2.47, which is that .921, I think, is good for, he's a top 15 goalie in the league, at least. He might be higher than that now. He played 17 games last season and 1 game the season before that. So I technically think this is his rookie season. It's really tough to, I don't know the rules for goalies as well as I should, but Dustin Wolf is a goalie that, again, having paid a lot of attention to the AHL the past handful of years, he is a goalie that it is really, really easy to root for. He's on the smaller side. He's listed as 6 foot on NHL.com. That man is not 6 foot. I have stood next. He is 6 foot in skates, maybe. Signed someone who stood next to him at the All-Star game while he was in skates and I was not, and we were of a similar size. So smaller goalie from Gilroy, California, actually, which is about an hour south of the Bay, which is fun. And he's stopped the puck at basically every single stop that he's been to. He was the CHL goalie of the year. He was on all-star teams for the WHL. He was on the AHL all-rookie team in 2022. He was an all-star last year. He won the OHL's outstanding goaltender 2 seasons in a row. Like, he's stopped the puck and he's done it well basically every single stop that he's had. And he's been very, very good this season. Like 1, 2, 3, 4 of his 12 games, he's had a sub 900 save percentage. And I believe they've lost all 4 of those games. Yes. So basically, if he's playing well, the Flames are winning. So if he decides to play well tonight, he did lose against Ottawa, which was not their last game, but was a couple of games ago. They lost to Ottawa, and then they lost in overtime to Detroit. So I assume Dan Vladar was in net for that one. Again, I'm going to go ahead and assume that we'll see Dustin Wolf tonight. They didn't play yesterday, and they don't play. Oh, they do play tomorrow, but they're playing the Penguins, who are below the Blue Jackets in the standings. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that they're going to play Dustin Wolf tonight, Dan Vladar tomorrow night. Dustin Wolf is a really, really good goalie. The Flames probably win this matchup in goaltending. However, where they don't win it is scoring. Is my opinion. Like, I looked at their leading scorer, I think, has 13 points. Their 2 leading scorers have 13 points, or 12 points, excuse me. So Jonathan Huberdeau, Connor Zary, and Nazem Kadri all have 12 points on the season in 23 games. And then Rasmus Andersson and Mackenzie Weegar do have 13 points. There we go. I always forget that they separated by forwards and defensemen on NHL.com. So their leading scorers right now is Rasmus Andersson and Mackenzie Weegar, who are both defensemen, and they've got 13 points in 23 games. Calgary Flames are 26th in goals for per game and 7th in goals against per game. It's basically the polar opposite of the Blue Jackets, who are 7th in goals for per game and 29th in goals against per game. So, like, this is going to be a really interesting, like, can the Flames goaltending outdo the Columbus goal scoring? And I think it's going to be a really interesting one. Like, after going on a little bit of a scoring cold spell where they scored 5 goals over 4 games or something. They then scored 6 goals against Pittsburgh, 5 against Boston, 7 against Tampa Bay. 5 against Carolina, and then 3 against that loss in Montreal. There was a 5-1 loss to Montreal also in there, but like they figured out how to score goals again, which is fun. So it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out on top there. What we do know is it's probably going to be at 5-on-5 because both teams' power play is not very good. Both teams' penalty kill is not very good. Now, that being said, a struggling penalty kill is usually good for what ails you if your team is struggling on the power play and vice versa. But who's going to take advantage of that first? The Blue Jackets are one of the less penalized teams in the NHL, I believe. It always feels like they take 1 million penalties, and then I go and look, and I'm like, oh, actually, they're like 30th in the league in penalties taken, and I don't know if NHL.com will tell me what I want here, but here we go. Penalties taken. The Blue Jackets are okay. So the Blue Jackets are 21st in the league in penalties taken. If you look at it, okay, here we go. Fewest penalties taken is the Islanders, and then the Blue Jackets are 12th. So they've taken 76 penalties this season, and they've drawn 64 of them. So they are 67 of them, excuse me. So they are getting the third fewest amount of power plays in the league, and taking the 12th fewest. So again, a lot of even strength hockey happening. I assume there's going to be a lot of even strength hockey happening tonight. The Blue Jackets don't take a ton of penalties. Neither do the Calgary Flames. They have the 10th most, so like they take more than the Blue Jackets, but they're still like 20 penalties below the Boston Bruins, who've taken 114 penalties. Hilariously, the Utah Hockey Club has taken 13 major penalties this season, which seems wild. The Blue Jackets, I don't think, have taken any major penalties. Fighting majors, I forgot about the existence of. So, again, my guess is that there's going to be a lot of even strength hockey being played tomorrow night or tonight, and we'll see where it goes from there. I was going to do predictions, but instead I want to spend the third segment talking a little bit about Johnny Gaudreau, because that's what's going to be. Everyone wants to talk about it in media, on Twitter, on everywhere, and for good reason. So instead of predictions, we're going to spend the third segment talking about just a little bit about Johnny Gaudreau, because I read a couple of really good articles, and I wanted to share them with you guys. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and also us, the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Normally, this is where we would do predictions and, who's going to score goals and who's going to win and whatnot. But instead of that, I wanted to talk a little bit about Johnny Gaudreau, because that's what tonight is going to be about. It's going to be another emotional night for both teams. This is Johnny Gaudreau's old team, where he spent 9 years playing for, against his new team, where he was there for 2 seasons. And this is going to be a really tough game, I think, for everyone. Obviously, the Blue Jackets have a banner hanging up to honor Johnny this season. They've got his 13 in the rafters. In terms of retiring that number, I don't think it's retired, but I do wonder if it is like quietly retired. I know we talked at the beginning of the season of like, what if Kent Johnson goes back to 13 to honor Gaudreau, or what if they give it to Sean Monahan? And neither of those options happened. I do think it is kind of quietly, not like officially retired, but I do think if anyone comes into the organization and is like, can I wear 13? I think the organization can be like, no, what are you insane? So that's going to be tough, I think, for the Calgary players to kind of look at first. I don't know if tomorrow they're going to do any kind of like ceremony or like anything like that. I assume they will. It sounds like the Gaudreaus are going to be in town. All of the Gaudreaus, the parents, the siblings, the spouse-in-laws. Meredith will be there with the two children. So it's going to be emotional. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, there was a couple of articles, one by Eric Francis that I read just a little while ago, which is he talked to Sean Monahan about it. And it's just a really nice, like, emotional piece. Because Meredith Gaudreau is still living in Columbus. She's living 2 doors down from the Monahans, which is where they plan to live. Like, they bought a house 2 doors down from the Gaudreaus specifically so they could hang out. And it talks a lot about, like, Sean Monahan, his baby still plays with Gaudreau's baby, who's 3 months older than him, and he talks about, like, he was really excited to be in Columbus, but specifically to play with Johnny, and how he's really trying hard to honor Johnny's legacy and playing well, and like he's really been rewarded this season by sticking with it and doing all of the right things, and it's a really, really nice piece, and I just wanted to mention it, and I'll link to it in the comments below if anyone hasn't read it yet. Really, really great article from Eric Francis on Sportsnet. And I think it's really nice, and it's also really, really honest. Monahan, he basically says, no, I'm still not okay. I'm not over it. I don't think I'm ever going to get over it. Like, I cry basically all of the time thinking about it. Like, I'll drive to the rink and I'll have a breakdown about how Johnny's not going to be there, and Johnny's stall is still there in the locker room, and it sounds like the stall that he used still has a bunch of his stuff in it, like that he just left there over the summer. Obviously, that for people who don't know, there are 2 home locker rooms. For most home teams anyway, that they'll have the room where everyone gets changed, and then they'll have an identical room that they'll do post-game media in, where they don't have like underwear hanging around and stuff like that. So they will have, they've got Johnny has a place in both of these, and Sean Monahan does all of his post-game interviews in front of Johnny Gaudreau's stall. Something else that I really liked, and something that Dean Everson kind of implemented when he came in, is the Blue Jackets just got a brand new dressing room, I think 2 seasons ago. And part of the things was they had pictures of all of the players above their own stalls. And he basically said, no, I don't want individual pictures. If you want a picture above your stall, it has to be with someone else. And a really nice touch is that Sean Monahan, above his dressing room or above his stall, is a picture of Johnny Gaudreau and Boone Jenner, I believe it is. So, like, that's really nice. Again, there's a picture of Johnny up above his own stall with a couple of teammates, which is a really nice touch. And so, like, I don't have any kind of like hard-hitting analysis in this segment or anything like that. I just wanted to kind of draw attention to this story with Eric Francis, because it was a really, really nice story. I also wanted to give a shout out to Sean Monahan has a number 13 and JG on his sticks, and he's also added Noah and Johnny's names on there. Those are Johnny Gaudreau's children. And Zach Werenski also has got a really nice Gaudreau tribute on his as well, where he's got the 8, but he split that up so you can see there's like a 1 and a 13 based on, like, if you slice down the edge of the 8, then you get like the separate numbers, which is a really, really nice touch. And it's just really nice, like, it's really, really sad, but it's also really nice. There was another really nice article from Wes Gilbertson of the Calgary Herald, where also talking to Sean Monahan, but talking to a handful of Flames guys as well. So Blake Coleman was still there. There's been a lot of turnover for Calgary over the past couple of seasons, but Blake Coleman is still there, and Rasmus Anderson, I believe, is another guy. He actually spent Thanksgiving with the Gaudreaus, So Meredith, again, still lives in Columbus, which is amazing. I fully thought that she would just move back to New Jersey to be closer to the rest of the Gaudreaus, but it sounds like she's still living in Columbus. I'm seeing a lot of content of like the Blue Jackets will be hanging out with like the Blue Jackets wags will be hanging out with Gaudreau and her children, and it's just I don't know, it's really nice. But yeah, another really great article from Wes Gilbertson that talks to Anderson, talks to Coleman, like there's talks to Flames GM Craig Conroy. Like there's a lot of really nice stories again about Johnny Gaudreau, and like there was a really nice quote from the Calgary Herald piece, actually, that I wanted to read, which is from Dean Everson, who's actually a former Flames forward, and obviously came into this, got hired in July, and then, put everything together, met all of the players, and then obviously this horrible tragedy happened. Like, credit to him for, leading the team through this, because I think he's done a really good job of it. But quote from him in this Calgary Herald article, which is about Sean Monahan, actually. I remember back the first time I met him, we didn't say any words. I talked to him on the phone, but it was just a hug and emotion. He's been a big part of our healing process because guys were watching how he reacted and how he handled himself and how he spoke and conducts himself in interviews and in the locker room. Just how he's acted has been a real calming effect and leadership within our room. So, again, I've said it on this show before, and I'm going to say it again. Like, obviously it's horrible that this happened, and I think we would be telling all kinds of different stories if Gaudreau was still here. But having Sean Monahan in the Blue Jackets room, I think, has been so important for him and also for the rest of the team, because can you imagine if he'd been on literally any other team when this happened and it wasn't like, oh, I'm surrounded by Gaudreau's friends, I'm surrounded by John's teammates, like I'm all of these people who knew him, not as well or as long as Monahan did, but like if he'd been anywhere but Calgary or Columbus, like that dude I think it would have been so sad for him. So I'm really glad that he's here. Obviously, I'm really glad that he's performing as well. And that's kind of that. It talks about it in the article as well, of like, John is with him. John is looking down on him, and that's that's not the only reason he's having a good season, but like it's really good to think about, and I feel like Sean Monahan has been really good, specifically at Nationwide as well. That's just kind of anecdotal. I haven't looked at the actual stats of that, but I feel like a lot of his points have come in Nationwide this season, which is, again, it's that 13 banner, man. And I said I wasn't going to do predictions, but I do think Sean Monahan is going to score a goal tonight. And I do think, whether it's a big one or not, I think it's going to be an emotional one for everyone. And that's kind of all I've got for today. We're going to do a bonus episode tomorrow where we break down tonight's game, talk the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know how it goes. I've been Jake Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.